Good evening and welcome to the October 13th meeting of the Edina Planning Commission. This meeting is being held both in person and electronically. All members of the Planning Commission, some staff, and presenters are participating from the council chambers. Others are participating from their homes or offices. Before we begin, there are a few things I'd like to cover for those who are hoping to participate in portions of tonight's meeting. The city is committed to continuing to receive and hear your input on matters. We've been collecting public input through voicemail and our engagement website, bettertogetheredina.org. It is important that you know that all comments that have been submitted have been received and read prior to the start of this meeting. You do not need to submit the same feedback in another way. All feedback is considered equally, regardless of the way in which it was submitted. Tonight, there will be 2 public hearings. Individuals who want to provide testimony remotely for a public hearing can call 1-800-374-0221 with conference ID 9329488, and that will be read again prior to that opportunity. Individuals in the room will be invited to come forward to speak first to the commission, and then we will hear from those who have dialed in. Everyone is allowed up to 3 minutes to speak. After giving your full name and address, the green light at your podium will turn on. When you have 30 seconds remaining, the yellow light will turn on. When you're out of time, the red light will turn on. Staff will let anyone who calls in know if they've gone over the 3 minutes. Remember, you do not need to call in or comment live tonight if you have already provided feedback. Also, please do not repeat any information already presented. Provide testimony if you have new comments or additional information to bring forward. Thanks in advance for your patience as we work to conduct this hybrid meeting. We hope that there will not be any issues, but please be assured that we will do our best to continue the meeting as best we can if there are glitches. And with that, I will call our meeting to order tonight. I don't remember how we do roll call. We do roll call. I'll hand it over to you.
Commissioner Miranda.
Here.
Commissioner Elkire.
Here.
Commissioner Bartling.
Here.
Commissioner Barbaro. Here. Commissioner Hayward.
Here.
Commissioner Strauss.
Here.
Commissioner Bennett.
Here.
Commissioner Olson.
Here.
Chair Agnew.
Here. Thank you. Next on the agenda is approval of meeting agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Any additional comments? All right. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, the approval of the meeting agenda has passed. Next is approval of meeting minutes from our last meeting, which was September 22nd of 2021.
I move to approve.
Second.
Any changes, any comments to make on the minutes? All right. All those in favor of approving the meeting minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the meeting minutes pass. All right, next now we have our special recognitions and presentations, which first is the election of officers. So as we know, 2 meetings ago now, Ian, who had been serving as chair, resigned from the Planning Commission, and so we need to elect a new chair.
I guess I move to approve you as the new chair.
I'd second that.
Okay, all those in favor of approving myself, Kate Agnew, as the new chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, I am the new chair. And with that, I have vacated a vice chair role. So we now need to fill a vice chair role. I do know that I spoke to Sheila and she has an interest, so I would like to nominate Sheila Berube for the vice chair role.
I'd second that.
Further discussion on that? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Sheila Garubi is now our new vice chair. We will text her and email her individually. Congratulations. All right. Next is the resolution number B2131, proposed Eden Wilson TIF district.
Thanks. Yes, good evening. My name is Bill Neundorf. I'm the city's economic development manager. Pleasure to be with you here this evening. In your packet tonight is the resolution you had mentioned, B2131, and this is in regards to a new proposal for a new tax increment financing district here in Edina, right in this general vicinity, right around City Hall. The request tonight is similar to a request that we made a few weeks ago about a different TIF district, so same kind of process in theory. But I'll run through briefly the staff report I submitted. I do have maps available if there's any discussion. They're the same ones that are in your packet. But the impetus for this particular TIF district is the redevelopment of the old Perkins site, the 4917 Eden Avenue. A developer proposed to remove that building and build a new project to redevelop that site in its entirety. The Planning Commission did approve that site concept back in April, and the City Council gave it preliminary approvals in June. I understand it's on a path to get its final approvals, most likely in early November of this year. Early on, the staff met with the developer to look at their budget and their financing. They had noted that the cost to build that particular design of that scale and quality was very expensive, and they would probably have a financing gap in order to meet all the requirements that were in the approved plan. One significant thing being dedication of some property on the western edge of the site for a future off-ramp or other public roadway type improvement. So over the last several months, we have reviewed their pro forma. We've met with the developers on a number of occasions. They've been very forthcoming, opening their books to let us see what the numbers are looking like. And we have confirmed that there is indeed a financial gap in that project that can be solved using tax increment financing. The other rationale behind this particular TIF district is that as part of the City Council approval of the preliminary approval of that project, they also wanted to see several public improvements in this whole area. There's a lack of sidewalks. There's some there's some high traffic volume during peak hours. Roadways aren't necessarily where or how they should be in a better situation. There's also very limited bicycle facilities. And the City Council made it clear that the approval of the 4917 site would also be incumbent upon the city moving forward and making several of these public improvements on the roads on Eden, 50th, Grange, et cetera. So the other rationale for this particular TIF district is to finance those public roadway improvements. Every time the city creates a new TIF district, we currently have 9 districts in Edina. The Planning Commission is asked to make an opinion and to confirm that the plan, the project that's part of this whole plan, is generally in conformance with the city's comprehensive plan. And there's some statutory language that we include in the resolutions that gets to that point. So that's my request for you here this evening, is to confirm that this proposed Eden and Wilson TIF plan is in compliance with the city's comprehensive plan, which includes by reference the Grandview District Framework from 2012, as well as the Grandview Transportation Plan from 2016, and all the other chapters of the comprehensive plan. In the staff report, I did include a few pages of findings. to help you be confident in that conclusion, we reviewed the Southeast Edina redevelopment project plan from 2012. We reviewed the Grandview plan from 2012, and then also the transportation plan from 2016. And finally, we reviewed the goals that were contained in our 2018 comprehensive plan, and specific excerpts of those documents are included in the staff report. So in conclusion, this resolution, B2131, has been prepared to confirm that the Eden Wilson TIF plan does conform to the general plans for the development and redevelopment of the city as a whole, and we recommend that this resolution be approved this evening. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or move forward.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, are there any motions?
I move to approve. I don't have it in front of me, the motion, but I move approval as in the staff report.
Second?
Any further comment on this resolution tonight? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the resolution passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is our community comment section. So during community comment, we invite residents to share relevant issues or concerns. Individuals must limit their comments to 3 minutes. I may limit the number of speakers on the same issue if there's an interest of time and topic, which I don't think we will have tonight. Generally speaking, items that are elsewhere on tonight's agenda may not be addressed during community comment. And also, please do not expect any of the commissioners to respond to tonight's comments tonight. Instead, we will refer the matters to staff for consideration at a future meeting. So is there any public comment tonight? No? Okay. Seeing none, we will close the community comment section and move on now to our public hearings. So the first one that we have tonight is B2130, which is a variance from side setback at 5608 Dale Avenue.
Thank you, Chair, members of the commission. This project came in as a building permit, so the owners were under the impression that they would receive a permit and they are ready to go. Unfortunately, they do need a side yard setback variance, and the property is located at 5608 Dale, which is highlighted here. It's a 2-story home with an attached 2-car garage. The bold area that is outlined here is the area that will be the addition. It's a second-floor addition above the existing garage. They currently have a second floor over in the northern portion of the house. What you'll notice is the house is not centered on the lot. The setback on the north side is over 20 feet. On the south side, it is 5.1 feet at its closest corner. The minimum side yard setback required is 10 feet. This property would be able to extend the first floor at that non-conforming setback because there is an alternate setback that standard that would allow for a limited addition to the same floor. However, to go straight up, they're not going to be adding to the footprint at all. It does require a variance because the second floor does not meet the 10-foot side yard setback. This is very similar to, I think it was 3 other requests we've had at the last meeting. So this is the house. It's a 2-story house, again, 2-car garage that they would like to move the second floor over to encompass the area above the garage. This is the new first floor and the new addition above the first floor. This is the north elevation, which will remain unchanged. The rear elevation, and then the south elevation, which is the area that's impacting for the variance. Now, the second floor will not extend all the way to the back wall of the garage. They are planning on having a deck above there as well, so it's not going to, the wall area is not going to be as long or as deep into the rear yard for that second floor piece as on the first floor. So this is the new floor plan of the second floor. They would like to add bedroom area, closet, a bathroom. They'll have a stair access, and then also the deck area. So regarding the compliance table, they meet all of the standards with the exception of that south side yard setback. The overall height is well within the maximum requirements. It's roughly 25 feet, which is matching what's existing for that current second floor. They're under the lot coverage requirement. The front yard setback is met with the second floor, and rear yard setback is more than twice as deep as what it would need to be. And then again, the north setback is 20.8 feet, which, you know, the house was not centered on the lot. Our records indicate that the house was built in 1955, which I believe is inaccurate. The property owners are saying that the main portion of the house was probably built in the 20s, and it's one of the more original homes in the neighborhood. Most of the homes were built in the 50s. It's probably due to the fact that there may have been an addition. The garage does not look like it's part of the original structure. So then this is the rendering of the house in context with the homes on either side. They're hoping to put that second floor in order to add some additional bedroom space. From a variance perspective, will it relieve practical difficulties? The existing south side of the wall is closer to the side yard setback. It was built prior to our current ordinance standards. It did not meet the standards currently, but at some point in time it did. There were no variances indicated when the home was originally built or if and when the garage was added on. The garage is closer to the side lot line currently. However, they're not intending to get any closer. They're just simply going up above the garage. Granting the variance should not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. The applicants are hoping to provide that additional interior space. Like other homes in the neighborhood, there are second floors above garages. Most of the homes were built in the 50s, so you have a lot of multi-level homes where there's a garage underneath and there's living space above, and then to the side there's additional living space. But they may not be two-story homes, they're more of a multi-level home, but that really is the character of the neighborhood. The recommended action is to approve the 4.9-foot south side yard setback variance, subject to the survey and elevations and plans, date stamped September 10th, 2021, and compliance with the conditions and comments in the environmental engineer's memo. They're not changing any of the grades, so the drainage isn't going to change either. There were no comments on the Better Together Edina site, and we didn't hear from any neighbors after public hearing notices went out. With that, I will stop and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Planner Ocker. Do we have any questions for the city tonight? No? All right, seeing no questions, I think we go over to the public hearing portion. All right, so we will now hear from residents who would like to provide testimony. If you are participating remotely, call in now at 1-800-374-0221 with conference ID 9329488. An operator will ask you for your name and street address and put you into a queue to speak after you press *1. We will first hear from any of those that are in the room and then move on to those who are on the phone. Do we have any callers on the phone tonight?
We do have one caller on the phone, so if we want to give them about a minute, if they want to enter the queue. If not, we can move forward, and I'll let you know when that's been.
Thank you.
I think you can go ahead and move forward.
All right, thank you. It seems we have no one for the public hearing tonight, so I think we can close the public hearing. If someone would like to make a motion.
Move to close the public hearing.
All those in favor of closing the public hearing, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the public hearing portion is now closed. So now we can discuss. Would anyone like to provide thoughts? Or if you thought of a question for the city, you can always interject with that as well.
Do we want to give them a chance to give a presentation?
Oh, is there? Oh my gosh. Do you have a presentation? If you would like to come and say anything, we would most definitely welcome you.
Okay,
And sorry
we'll both
about
up
that.
here together.
Yeah, of course.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Michael Lund. This is my wife, Maddie Lund. We bought this house at 5608 Dale Avenue nearly 4 years ago as we beat out a developer who wanted to tear it down. It's an old farmhouse. I think you had mentioned 1920s. We've heard 1922 as the exact date that it was constructed, an old Carl Hansen home. So we kind of fell in love with the house, the neighborhood, and have spent the last 3.5 years fixing it up, new roof, a lot of interior improvements, and have really kind of fallen in love with the neighborhood. As we continue to grow, start a family, we want to stay in Edina. We like our neighborhood, we love our neighbors, and the natural progression was obviously to add on, and there was only one way to do that, and that was above the garage. It was unfortunate for us that the house was off-centered in the center of the lot. Also unfortunate that we've got a significant grade going west where we couldn't expand out the back or off to the north either. So again, naturally and economically, we put this plan together, and again, not knowing that we needed a variance. So here we are this evening requesting just that. If anybody has any comments for us or questions, we'd love to answer them at this time.
Wonderful, thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Thank you, Commissioner Bennett, for that reminder. Any comments, any thoughts?
I guess I move to approve the variance as requested per the conditions and findings in the staff report.
A second.
Any further discussion? All right. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, this variance is approved. Thank you so much. Best of luck. All right. Next on the agenda is our last public hearing, which is for a zoning ordinance amendment for the 7001 to 7025 France Avenue development by Planner T. Please.
All right. Thank you, Chair, members of the Commission. This is a site that you're all familiar with in the Southdale District, south of the Galleria, on the intersection of 70th and France. On the east side, there's an existing 66,000 square foot U.S. Bank and office building. There's a few pictures, and a large surface parking lot. Site's guided community activity center in our most intense zoning district and area guided in the city in the comprehensive plan. So the site was rezoned. Final rezoning took place early this summer. Last winter, they went through the Planning Commission and City Council. What's on the screen is the plan that was approved for the site. Another just quick rendering. So that plan approved a one-story U.S. Bank building on the southwest corner. There's no change to that plan. They could build that at any point. They did receive final approval for that phase. The other three sites are the three that we're looking at this evening. The first, what was approved, was a 24-story, 270-unit apartment when there was 5,000 square feet of retail on the bottom. There was a 10-story combination office retail building on the corner and a 9-story, 110-unit apartment building. Within that building was where the affordable housing was likely to occur. 10% of those units would be for affordable housing. What the applicant is requesting this evening is a revision to those plans. So it's an ordinance amendment to amend that PUD and granting a new overall development plan. So again, the bank stays the same. There is a 24-story tower still. The number of units have slightly reduced down to 267, and the retail space has also gotten smaller at 1,500 square feet. The 9-story building on the corner has been reduced to 6 to 7 stories. The retail office space is generally the same. The parking within that building has been relocated to a freestanding parking structure, and that's what's replacing that 9-story housing. So again, here's a look at 70th and France on the corner of the new plans that are proposed this evening. The general layout of the site remains the same, dividing the site into 4 development parcels, providing that pedestrian and vehicular connections both north-south and east-west through the site. One change of note is the small pocket park has been relocated to here. In the approved plans, it was on the south side of the 24-story tower that was on this site here. This is where the parking structure is now proposed that replaces the second apartment building. The size of the park is generally the same. In the previous plan, it was 7,000 square feet. In this plan, it's 7,500 square feet. So here's just a quick rendering, and we'll have a side-by-side I'll show in a minute. But you can see this is the north-south street, and this is the park. So the building has been shifted back to open this space up. The park area where it was previously located here likely would have been shaded by the 9-story building. So it would have been shaded more than this location here, where you've got the open parking space for the U.S. Bank site that will be constructed on that site. So I'm going to run through just a series of side-by-sides. The applicant's going to go into this in more detail, so I will move through quickly. So on the left is the approved plan, and on the right is the current proposed plan. One thing I want to note is in the renderings, there's no landscaping, the double row of trees. That actually is part of the proposal, consistent with the design experience guidelines. They're just not showing up in the rendering. Another item of note, and this was highlighted in Mick Johnson's review from the Architecture Field Office, is in regard to the building materials. City code requires brick and stone on that first level. The proposed plans don't have that, so we've suggested that as a condition of approval, and the applicant is agreeable to that, but those materials are not shown on the plans. So again, kind of that same view. This is the east-west street right here. So this is a comparison of the north-south Ewing Avenue in the middle. So this is the previous plan where now the park is located. So you can see how this area is opened up more north-south. Another item of note is in the previous plans, there was access on both sides of the street into parking on both of those buildings. So there was some conflicts along the sidewalk here as people would move up and down the sidewalk. With the proposed plans, those have been moved, and I'll show a graphic that shows that a little bit better here in a second. So this is a look along 70th Street. One thing that Mick pointed out in his review is the street room typology. In the approved plan, there's a step back of about 14 feet. In the proposed plan, it's 12 feet, so it's only a 2-foot difference, but it does appear to be a little bit greater. And maybe it's because of there's not as much articulation in the building and it's straight up. But that was pointed out by the AFO review. This graphic shows that the approved plan being 14 feet 3 inches, and as proposed, it's 12 feet 4 inches. These next ones, this is that apartment building that's been removed, replaced with the parking structure. And I'll just quickly move through some of these elevations. They've provided some comparisons with existing parking structures that have been approved in town. Nolan Main's up at 50th and France, although there are some brick elements to this building. And the other is the Pentagon Village parking structure that was recently constructed about a year or two ago. So the request is for a zoning ordinance amendment to revise that PUD zoning and amendment to the overall development plan. So the city does have a lot of discretion with this to approve or deny because of the ordinance amendment. It's part of the city's protections in doing the PUD that when PUDs are created, the approved development plan is tied to that specific zoning. So again, you do have discretion to approve or deny here. So a quick review of the site plan. So this is the approved site plan. As I noted, these red X's indicate vehicle access on the previous plan. There was a parking and a loading dock within the retail building here. You may recall that there was a grocer that was intended to go into this building. That grocer is no longer part of the plan. So this loading dock has been reduced in size. And it also has some impacts on the parking and traffic study, and I'll get into that in a minute. So this is the proposed entry points. Note there's no entry on Ewing. There's a shared vehicle and that smaller loading dock. And then the access points to the 24-story building would be on the east side, and the entrance to the parking ramp. So in terms of compliance to the PUD that was approved, they're meeting those same setbacks that were required with the previous plan. The only change is in regard to the parking standards. So with that, in regard to the parking, based on the square footage, 780 commercial stalls are required. For the residential use, 267 for a total of 1,085. The proposal here is for 1,112. There was a parking and traffic study that was done, an update to the previous study, and the conclusion is in regard to the parking that 695 stalls are required. So there's an overage here of about a little over 400, about 417 stalls. The idea here is that those would be for district parking that's talked about within the small area plan here and the design experience guidelines. So there would be 400 stalls roughly available to the public for parking for the Galleria or the Promenade or any use in the district. So part of that give to get is that extra provision of parking here. So primary issue to consider Are these changes to the overall development plan reasonable to justify the change to the PUD overall development plan? So in this case, staff is supportive. The plans might not be as grand as the previous, but they do still address the Southdale Design Experience Guidelines. Some of the primary benefits, again, dividing the site into smaller parcels, allowing access both pedestrian and vehicular to adjacent properties. So the site to the south, when this develops, could gain access on the north-south street, as well as when the site to the east develops, they could gain access off of this internal drive. So what you're seeing here, all the green highlighted areas, that's the public realm that's proposed with this project. Again, I note the double row of pine trees, trees they are provided in the landscape plan. So within those interior roads, it makes up 26% of the site. That includes all this green area. It's excluding the areas along France and 70th, as that's our general standards, that public realm space. But the 26% is the interior roads and the park. So we believe it does continue to meet the PUD criteria for zoning. In regard to the affordable housing, the applicant is proposing at this time to do a buy-in. They'll continue to study it in the future, and when they actually come back for final approvals of any one of these phases, they might have another option for the affordable housing. So the requirement would be that they have to meet the proposed or the affordable housing policy, but at this point it looks like it would be the buy-in amount. Again, it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. In regard to the traffic, I didn't touch on that. The traffic study concludes that there would be between 25 and 40% less trips to the site. That's due to the reduction in the number of units and the elimination of that grocer. And I want to indicate here, so as part of the traffic study, one of the conditions was that based on all of the square footage, there would be a right turn lane required for northbound on France, the right turn lane onto 70th. The parking numbers, because of these reductions, that turn lane is no longer required, which is actually another big benefit of the changes. We had a number of comments on Better Together, both for and against. Those that didn't like the proposal, they don't like the changes, especially to the affordable housing component here. Some made comments about a bait and switch, how this project was just approved. Now they're coming back literally months later with the changes. Those that supported it liked the look of the project. We're excited to see more development and activity in the Southdale district. So in conclusion, staff has outlined options for the Planning Commission to consider, both for approval and denial. Again, staff is recommending approval subject to the findings and conditions that are outlined in the staff report. And with that, I will stop there and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? We do for Director Teague. Please, Commissioner Alkire.
Director Teague, I can ask the applicant about strategy for Site C, but I just wanted to make sure I was clear on the map as you just described it. So Site C has 540 parking stalls, and if I understood your presentation, the study says that only about 100 of those are required for the development, and that 400 of them are to be considered district parking. Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah, so
These are rough numbers.
when I'm giving those numbers, there's also parking that is included within the apartment complex.
And the building too.
And there's also parking stalls under the office and retail. So I'm combining all of them. The 400 stalls that would be available to the public. And again, we'd work out the details more at final, but primarily would be within the ramp on Site C.
So is it
Some would be available within, am I right in that? Or some available? Some available within the tower site as well, because there's some retail components in there too.
So I don't know if this is the right forum for this question, but does the district need 400 spaces of parking in that location?
Generally, there is enough parking within each site within the district. Part of the thinking behind the district parking is there would be shared parking like this. So this parking might enable the site to the east to develop at a higher density, and they wouldn't need to put as much parking in their project. Also, Galleria, should they expand, there's parking available to the south. We would have to factor that in the future. But in general, that's kind of how it worked. As an example, the Centennial Lakes, when that entire gravel pit was redeveloped, the idea there's, I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but within the entire development, there's 400 to 600 parking stalls over what would have been required by code, with the idea that every parking lot within Centennial Lakes is available to the public to use Centennial Lakes Park. So it's kind of that same concept here. Parking available for the district.
That would be the intention then, that this ramp is truly available to the public,
Correct.
not paid parking for whoever the tenants of these facilities are.
That's correct. And we'd have to work out some of those details. Maybe are there hours restrictions? We'd again work that out at the time of any final site plan where they've really got the site nailed down for what's going in there.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Strauss.
Yes, thank you. Carrie, well, I guess this one will work. So that lower right, is that what we were calling Lot C? The affordable housing?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Which is being replaced with a parking.
With the parking
ramp
structure.
And I don't know how many vehicles. But is that because there are that much less parking being provided in the two towers?
There's less parking, especially provided in Site B. This building was taller. It was 3 or 4 stories taller with the previous plan. Those were parking
And that was
areas of parking.
primarily underground parking.
Underground and above.
And then the primary residential tower to the east also probably is doing less underground parking then?
Correct.
And then this ramp is providing that overall
Right.
1,000-something number, right?
Correct. Well, 1,000 total on the site.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, just for we're looking at a parking ramp versus underground parking. I mean, that's kind of what probably drove it.
Correct. Yeah, there's been some underground parking.
I mean,
that's-
the developers can answer that too,
Yep.
but thank you.
Any other questions for Director Teague? No, I think we will move to the applicant's presentation.
I know I saw it in here. Yeah. So just. Okay.
It should be this.
Thanks.
Good evening. Commissioners, thank you for having us tonight. My name is Ted Carlson with Orion Investments, and with me is Nate Enger with ESG, Brent Webb with Mortensen, and then also in the audience, Nate Podratz with Mortensen. So, we're excited to be here tonight. 10 months after our PUD approvals last December with a project that we think is better and improved. And as we've gone through this project, we've balanced 12 different constituents over the past 10 months to develop this plan. We've met with the neighborhood. We're involved with the city council, involved with you tonight as planning commission. We've got the county, we've got the watershed, we've got office tenants, retail tenants, multifamily tenants. We need to find equity and debt partners. We've got a construction partner, and U.S. Bank owns the site. So as we think about how do we make a better project, we're balancing 12 different constituents. And I think that, frankly, we've done a really good job of taking an approved project and improving it today. So as we talk about this, we're here for you tonight, and we hope to have some favorable feedback. But really, I want to just address, why the changes. And really, it's driven by, things that are completely out of our control. We have massive market changes that are that are a result of global supply chain issues, commodity pricings, and just efficiencies that we can't control. So those things made this project no longer feasible. So just want to throw that out and just address it head on. So what did Nate and I do? We think we made the project better. And Carrie touched on a bunch of those different things. So we've maintained the core design principles. The site is platted and the easements are in place. So in our previous submission, we had a lot of recognition for dividing this into making super blocks, and we maintained that. We've adjusted this to market conditions. On Ewing, we've eliminated the access points for vehicles, so that enables us to have an art fair, enables us to have food trucks, enables us to have a concert, enables us to establish that 70th in France art fair, so to speak, that we see at 50th in France today. The standalone ramp further enhances what we think is a more clear public benefit and helps extend the site beyond our borders. We talked about connectivity a lot in our last approvals, and that's maintained here and we think enhanced. We've added additional bike storage and service almost along 2/3 of the front of 71st Street on the lower level of the ramp. And we took this ramp and tried to make it a standalone piece of art. That might be hard to wrap your head around as you're looking at a parking ramp, but I think if you compare this to other ramps that have been recently done, not only in our community but elsewhere, we've really put a good foot forward to make this ramp stick out in a positive way. We've reduced the density by 31%. We've reduced our height on that Site C from 9 stories to 7. We do park on the roof, but it's 9 to 7. And reduced our office retail building by 3 stories. The traffic is 40% reduced. A large percent of that has to do with eliminating a grocer possibility from the plan. And really importantly, in our last entitlement hearings was France is a county road. We never wanted to write in off of France, but according to the traffic study, we no longer need it. So again, Nate's here on our highlighting our changes. We think the plaza is better. We think it's more serviceable. It's got better light. And we can now close Union Avenue off north to south to host community events and to play off that plaza. So with that, I'll turn it over to Nate, who can talk a little more about some of the specific design elements.
Thanks, Dave. Good evening, commissioners. Thank you for your time this evening. I'm going to pick up where Ted left off a little bit. I apologize for the static here. But as Ted highlighted, really what we're focused on today is the improvements from the approved plan from back in December 2020. So this is just kind of the highlights of what we see as probably the most impactful changes that have been made to this plan in light of some of the opportunities that we've had. 31% less residential density. That is with a building that is the same amount of stories, but is 15 feet less tall now. So we found some efficiencies in floor to floor. There was a question about parking, and specifically we'll address that now in speaking about the reduction in the office height. So initially we had a 5-story office on top of 4 stories of parking. That was above grade parking with the addition of 2 levels of below grade parking. So we have eliminated those stories of above grade parking, which you saw in the original renderings, which created kind of a street wall. And those have been moved off now, affording us for a shorter building, and we believe a more attractive building. And then, obviously, the improved pedestrian activation along Union Avenue, and we'll have more images of that to kind of show you where we think the real enhancements are made.
But I think first we'd like to go a little bit deeper into the before and afters that Carrie shared and maybe talk about some of the design modifications. So first and foremost, speaking directly to that comment I made about the office, you can see on the left that kind of chunk in the middle, the kind of belt band, was where the parking was before in the previous scheme. So there's about 4 stories of parking in there with a metal panel surround. So that was non-activated space. In the current plan, the book proposal, we have eliminated those and those on site C into the interior of the development. In the long plans, we believe this has created a more attractive facade, more activated facade, more pedestrian-friendly facade. Speaking specifically to Carrie's comments about the materiality, we are certainly interested in switch me off. Okay. How's that? Still the mask, maybe. We had designed this to have a type of metal panel facade, which we believed was very attractive, but we are definitely open to complying with the stone standards that you have for those pedestrian level activations. Again, some more before and afters. This is a very similar angle, but you can see the dramatic difference here in the removal of the parking along France Avenue. And then the interior street. So it becomes readily apparent when you look on the left side and on the right side how much that move of changing both the parking and also the shift of the office building further west towards France has opened up that activation in the center, creating what we believe will be a much more vibrant streetscape and something that has more access to daylight, which is a massive improvement on the previous plan. This is similar facades for the residential entry. We believe that we've maintained the same or better quality of entry experience. One thing of note here is that while we're showing similar setbacks, we have more articulation in this building facade here, which we think makes for a more attractive pedestrian experience. This is from the interior of the development, and again, you can see the impact visually that kind of opening up that corner has made with the removal of the parking in that kind of orange band there. And just another view, of course, of the enhanced Ewing Avenue. We're looking at about 50 feet of kind of overall difference between the previous plan and the new one. 50 additional feet, that's correct, Ted, thank you. And then I'll just go through these really quickly here. So for just a little context, these are elevations of the Site A residential tower. Same amount of floors, approximately same unit count, or a little bit reduced, but you can see that the overall bulk and height of the building has been reduced, and that is by finding efficiencies in the floor-to-floor heights. And then just a couple more overall shots here. Just digging in a little bit deeper on the plaza, I think the note that Director Teague made about the previous plaza, while appropriate and activated, it would have been shadowed by the previously designed affordable housing project. Moving this to the east side, we believe, opens it up into a more useful space that will have access to daylight, throughout the day. And then these are just some updated renderings that we can certainly come back to as there's more questions. But fundamentally, the materiality and the design expression of this project has stayed the same or improved since the previous submittal. So we're still looking at large glassy expanses of building here, trying to keep the transparency, the light feel, stepping back off of France, but still making a very prominent statement along that corner, which we think is appropriate for a development of this scale. Articulating the facade at pedestrian level using kind of articulation push in and push out of the mass there so that we don't have monolithic walls along the street. And then some interior shots as well, just so you can get a sense for the quality of that streetscape. And we can certainly come back to any of these if you have questions. And then just briefly, Director Teague touched on this, but a couple of the images of the Site C parking ramp as well. And you can see here the bike activation as well as kind of some of the landscaping activation that is shown in the pedestrian element at the lower level. And then of note is the breakdown of materiality along this, which we believe helps to make it seem a lot less like a parking ramp and more like a art expression, as Ted kind of identified. And then lastly, a kind of a context image for you to see how this kind of newly refined skyline, so to speak, works with the existing buildings there. So you can see it works very nicely in stepping back the massing from kind of a lower height building along France all the way to the higher density as you move east. Excuse me. And then just to recap, these the highlighted in orange are really the improvements that have been made since the last plan. So the entry for the residential tower has been slightly relocated. A big benefit of this plan is that we've been able to remove curb cuts along Ewing that really allows for more of that pedestrian activation in a way that we couldn't have done before. And that leads to the enhanced streetscaping of Ewing, more contiguous, more consistent, less chopped up. The office lobby has shifted slightly north so that the pedestrian plaza really now is the focus feature on the corner there as opposed to the office tower, and that is intentional to really put the focus on the pedestrian realm. And then we can talk about this more as well, but we have included some active flex spaces along the pedestrian realm on Building A at the corner there that would be used for street fairs or kind of flexible events. They are spaces that could be used for a bunch of different uses. And then, of course, the Site C parking structure. And then kind of the last things that we just wanted to show was what, kind of the collective vision was for how this space could really be used now in a way that maybe the previous plan didn't allow for. This is demonstrating what perhaps a street fair or an open market could really look like when you begin activating Ewing. You can see here we've kind of shut down 71st and 70th there, and you can start to see these vendor stalls really becoming activated. That's what we're talking about here. These are garage door type spaces that can be opened up and used flexibly to really support any type of use all year round. And this kind of demonstrates how the plaza could be utilized. You can see that the entry doesn't take prominence on this corner. It's really about the plaza here. And again, that's intentional from our team. And then finally, this is really, I think, the vision that we have is to create a vibrant community within development and be the beginning, certainly not the end, but the beginning of a larger expansion in this part of town as these sort of developments move further east. Overview of the development. And then just some closing comments to, again, reiterate some of the improvements that we see as important. 31% less residential density, the reduction in height of both the office building and the residential tower, and the improved pedestrian activation along Ewing. So with that, I think we'd like to open it up for questions.
I want to play one video.
Yeah. Oh, please.
So then as we were like, okay, how do we make this pop out a little more? We had a video created that will hopefully give you a shot of the site today. Because when we think about development, I always want to ask, what are we losing? And what we've got right now is a 1970s era suburban office building with very few windows, no stormwater management, no plaza, and literally zero of the design experience guidelines. So while our project might not be exactly perfect, we think it's a very good representation of what the DEGs are meant to bring to life. And that's what we want to show for you tonight. So really, that's it from us. We're here to stand for questions. Brent, what did we miss?
I think that's pretty much everything. We're here for questions. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Who would like to kick it off? Please, Commissioner Strauss.
Gentlemen, thank you. Yeah, that view that's up, which is Ewing Street between 70th and I don't know what the 71st, so, okay. And what you're showing there in the previous concept, that would have been, this kind of activity would put more than like intended for 71st, right? I mean, this kind of gathering, you didn't see it as what we're showing here on Ewing.
We did not, because we had vehicular entrances for underground parking both on Site A and on Site B. So we wouldn't have been able to restrict Ewing simply because we wouldn't have been able to provide vehicle
No, I
access.
like that point. So those, you mentioned about reducing the curb cut. So neither of those driveway entrances exist in the revised. So there is no traffic moving into parking areas?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Please, Commissioner Alkire.
Thanks for the presentation. For me, there's a lot to like here. I think what you said about the plaza being better, absolutely agree with that. It looks like a very useful and pleasant place for pedestrians and lots of events. What I'm stuck on, though, is the parking garage, frankly. So I just wonder if you could spend a few minutes talking about why it's there. I mean, did you feel you needed that much parking in that location? And is it just a matter of moving it out of the existing buildings into some other place? Because my bias would be rather not use precious square footage just for cars when we could use it for people and living and working. So I just want to make sure that there's a critical reason to use that precious square feet, those precious square feet just for cars. Can you say a few words about that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to start, and then Ted, you can finish. Commissioner, thank you for that great question, because obviously it's been 10 months and we've spent a lot of time trying to absorb all the changes that were happening in the marketplace. And to answer your question, I think we were really trying to understand efficiencies within what we presented before and how we can make it even more efficient and better with this time around. There was parking within Site B before that we realized that there were some efficiencies to actually take it out of Site B where the office tower was. And that really what helped us provide something that we think was a lot better, that allowed us to remove that access point off of Ewing that you saw, so then we can concentrate that to Site C. But also allowed us to put that plaza space as well along Ewing, because all those moves actually allowed us to provide that center activation along Ewing. I think big picture, we do need the parking for the components of the project, so the retail and really the office. But also we think, big picture, this is a lean in forward, an investment for the future, because as Director Teague said, there has been plans and there has been a thought process about district parking, and this is our way of kind of leaning into the future. We're doing that already with the grid system, but this is just another move to make it even better. Ted, do you have any other final comments that you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, so as I talked about our 12 project partners, Commissioner, we need to solve for tenant demands and current demands today to include debt and equity. And frankly, we need to maintain a certain number of parking spaces to make this viable types of tenants. And when you look at what we wanted to do is how do we make the project better and more efficient, we did this. And so this parking ramp is a precast ramp that's designed to look very nice, that is easily recyclable in the future, for lack of a better term, and in the meantime provides a greater public benefit beyond these borders.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Commissioner Bartling.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions, but I'll extend off that one. So for the design of the parking, as we think about future flexibility, are you have you thought about flat plate for if you could, renovate that versus, because I hate talking about, as you simply just said, knock it down essentially. What about designing it for future flexibility where it could become an office building or residential?
Well, I think that's one of the things about a precast ramp is that it's got, future reuse if you can take it down and put it back together on another site. But when we think about parking and how do we lay it out efficiently, and this was a major learning exercise for me and part of our team, is that a parking stall is rectangular shaped. It's 8.5 or 9 feet by 18 feet. And so when we look at this and you design from the ground up, what our current plan lacked was efficiencies in any kind of parking, which contributed to excessive costs. So as we looked at how do we lay out the site to make it efficient, you've got the same amount of drive aisle that you need to accomplish per floor. And we needed to get to a parking efficiency ratio to make it economically feasible because these stalls are rectangular in shape. So what I'm trying to drive at is that we started from how do we get this to be as efficient as we can to keep the costs down and still provide the parking that we need to service our market. And so that's what we started with, was from laying out the most efficient grid on the floor plate, providing for those drive aisles and taking it vertical. So providing flat plates takes that efficiency and decreases it by a factor of almost 25%.
I'm well aware, but
Okay.
I know that that's been something that many cities are starting to ask for, and maybe even probably in the future will require for parking, just as I know, especially with our comprehensive plan, parking is something we want to eliminate. I mean, it sounds, kind of funny, but that's the direction we're going to. So it's just something I wanted to bring up and ask if you had thought about that. The other thing, a couple of things really. Are you implementing any sustainability measures within this project?
I can speak to that. So thank you, Commissioner, for that question. We're actually working intimately with somebody that you know, Julianne Lau. And for us, sustainability is not just, a finished project. We've actually been exploring different ways in how we can implement sustainability from the moment that we're touching the U.S. Bank building for how we're treating materials, but also we're exploring how we actually source materials so that we're taking sustainable practices. But, tangibly, as we think about each of the buildings, we're exploring LEED right now for the multifamily building. We're also taking cues from the 2022 proposed plans for sustainability for Edina and exploring ParkSmart for the parking ramp. And then Site B, we're actually taking cues from a project that we started in Tempe, and something that we've really has resonated with us in our organization is just this more holistic approach to buildings. It's called the 9 Building Standards for Healthy Buildings by Harvard. You can Google it, but it really is more all-encompassing from how we're treating the air, how we're treating the water, what's the experience for the people that are in the buildings. So it's kind of taking all those different approaches for the Site B or for the office building as well. So we're really kind of taking a multi-pronged approach. And on top of that, we're also trying to explore different ways that we can incorporate solar. I mean, obviously with the scale of the different buildings that we have to find a locations that's most optimal. So that's what we're trying to explore and balance right now.
Yeah, I would tack on to that. Maybe Director Teague can answer, but we've had multiple conversations with Grace Hancock with the Mortenson Sustainability Team. And while her comments were limited to a brief blurb in the engineering memo, I believe that Grace was very supportive of the initiatives that we've provided within this project.
Thank you. And then I know one critical thing that I know that's sitting on a lot of minds up here is the affordable housing piece. Why, I guess, are you removing that? I understand you're removing your unit counts, but why are you removing that in its entirety, especially? Brent? Yeah.
I think another, Commissioner, great question. I think it's important to understanding the journey that we've been on for affordability here. So after our plans were approved back in December, we quickly actually went out and actually spoke with Aon, Common Bond, PPL, Bethesda. Some of these groups were actually referred to us by Stephanie Hawkinson to explore a partnership to evaluate affordable housing. After that process, we identified PPL as a great partner. They had a really strong track record. I think they provided a really creative proposal. And as we started evaluating their plans,
They also saw impacts for commodity pricing. I mean, that was at a time where wood pricing was kind of through the roof, and a lot of their projects were falling apart because of the commodity pricing. But we were still endeavoring to try to figure it out to them, to the point that we actually started negotiating a term sheet with PPL. And then as our project was starting to absorb and realize these economic changes and the supply chain demand changes, we determined that having affordable on this site was going to be really challenging. But I think, what we're doing right now is that we understand that the story for affordable is not done with our project. Yes, we're saying that there's the buy-in, but for us, we're also still exploring, do we try to figure out an opportunity to partner with another affordable housing developer in Edina for a different site? Do we try to find an existing naturally occurring affordable housing project in Edina that we could support and buy? So for us, I mean, since we have until our building permit is pulled essentially for the multifamily building, which will likely be at the end of 2023, if not Q1 of 2024. So we have some time to explore this, but at the same time, we understand this is really important. And we're exploring all options right now to consider that path to affordable housing in Edina.
Okay. Thank you. The other question I had, let's see, I'm blanking on what it was. I know I had another one. I always ask these questions, and maybe not, but the design of it. I guess I actually liked, there's some things I like about the new, but there's some things from the old, if you will, that I feel really elevated the spirit and brought some interesting things to it, and those have all gone away. And I guess I know some of it is like, well, you wanted to remove that because that's not a parking ramp anymore, so you got to make it different. But I feel that you also kind of just blanded it out a little bit. And to me, I guess I just want to understand where your direction was, and even within that, within the design, with the parking. Why aren't you making it more cohesive? That parking ramp, albeit, I think Director Teague showed a much more appealing elevation than any of the ones you guys are showing, because he seemed to have elevations that you haven't shown here, but because this doesn't, for what Director Teague showed was much nicer than what is giving justice to this image on the right here. But I guess that just feels like it's kind of like the stepchild, although maybe it seemed interesting on that elevation. Here it feels flat and dull, and then you've got some copper things going on that are kind of there now but seem to have been, which made sense before, but they now aren't making sense because you removed it all from the office building. And I like the copper piece, but it feels like now it's not all cohesive to me, where it felt a little more cohesive, maybe heavy, but cohesive before. So I guess that's just my thoughts on the design aspect of it.
Thank you, Commissioner. Great question. I'm going to respond to those, I think, in reverse order. With your last comment about the copper-colored piece, we agree there were some really great initial design elements, and we like to think that every single design challenge we rise to, we try and solve to the best of our abilities. Without a parking ramp, obviously there's no need for a screening element, which is where that kind of coppery element came from in the office building. We do have some opportunities, certainly, as we move forward with this, to address some of that contiguous nature of the design, which you, I think, rightly pointed out, still has kind of a layer of work to go through. And I think those opportunities are still at the base of the building, where Director Teague had rightly pointed out that there needs to be some thoughtful exploration about the materiality of that base. And that might be where we could begin looking at those connections between the Building A parking ramp, which is that kind of copper tone, which I agree is pretty attractive. There might be some connectivity between those two pieces and start to weave a thread through this thing that makes it feel more contiguous from that standpoint. We did try to the best of our ability to maintain the essence of the form on both of these buildings, while still recognizing some of the challenges that we had in the commodity market. So some of the building systems that we are using now are out of necessity because of the pricing impacts of those, but we believe we are making really good strides with the application of those, window wall, precast, those sort of things, and certainly those are design elements that we will continue to evolve as we move through this process. Ted, do you want to maybe address Site C?
Yeah, so first of all, shout out to Director Teague for having better renderings than us. But I think, what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I think it might be at the end of his package.
Yeah, it was like one of the side-by-sides, I think, comparisons. Yeah, there we go.
Thank you, Director Teague. So I think to our point here was, this needs to look really cool as a parking ramp can look. And our design element here was to carry this glass up and down the stairwell for two reasons. One, to play off the glass on our other two sites, which you may have noticed the multifamily tower now looks like two buildings coming together instead of one monolithic building. I think that's a big improvement. And on the office building, glass curtain walls, we think are a drastic improvement over what we previously had. So we wanted to carry that through, and it also provides a certain measure of safety, provides a future branding opportunity for the connection of this district with some interesting signage. And we tried to break it up so that you can't see the different angled slope parking decks. So if you're looking, closely, you'll just see different materials and shading and articulation in and out to try to break it up and to truly make it look like a piece of three-dimensional art. Commissioner, I don't know if that's answering your question, but
The images you all have show pretty much the two right images, and that feels a little heavy-handed and I guess not as thought out and as eloquent as the left side. It feels like it has a little more, I don't know, architectural, just thoughtfulness to it, to me. And with the transparency of it and the feel of it, it feels like a cool, modern piece, where the part on the right just feels forced. And that's, and it feels heavy. So I would say, try to play on the left side a little more. And I think for a parking ramp, I think it's nice on the left side, and the right side not as much. But I like the very kind of industrial, modern feel of it, to be honest. And again, maybe try, if you are keeping that copper elements, try to pull that in maybe with that and, make something with that. But on to that note, Director T, a question for you. In our plan where it requires stone and brick, really?
It does.
Okay.
On the first level.
And if they didn't want that, would they have to apply for a variance on that, or how does that work?
Yeah, it could be flexibility through this PUD.
Yeah, because, and this is maybe a general comment, because I just like to have my comments be made, as you all know. I personally think it would be a unfortunate event to require stone or brick on this modern-ish, more modern structures and design of what they're trying to do. And really, our city could use a little more modern design, more glass, more metal, more diversity. So that's just my 2 cents on that. So, but overall, I think a lot of the elements you guys brought up with the plaza, I really, as Commissioner Alkire had mentioned, I really appreciate that and could see myself going there and enjoying that, and I think many people would. And I think there's a lot of great things happening here, and good luck and with it all.
Other questions? Okay, Commissioner Alkire.
Just very briefly, I wanted to completely endorse what Commissioner Martinly just said about stone and brick. I'm not an architect, but to me, if you put stone and brick on those beautiful pieces of building that we just saw, it would not be a great addition to Edina. So I would second that motion.
So I do have one question. I noticed that you're reducing the housing by roughly 30% by eliminating the, I think it was workforce housing. Why not reduce that roughly 30% from the 24-story tower to maintain, and like that would be good to give a little bit more short on that tall tower, then also give those residents a little bit more of their ceiling height, because I'm concerned the ceiling height has been reduced drastically. So 2 questions in there, one being about ceiling height and one being about why not reduce from the tower.
Great questions, Commissioner. Thank you. I'll address the ceiling height issue. ESG does a lot of housing, and we have a lot of experience in this marketplace. The floor-to-floor heights that we're using right now are very standard for the market. In fact, what we had shown previously might have been what you would consider higher-end luxury. So personally, from our standpoint, we don't have any concerns about ceiling heights being substandard, and certainly that wasn't a driver overall for saving cost. It was just more of a realignment of getting everything into scope. So that's the ceiling heights. Do you want to talk a little bit about the stacking?
Well, I think on top of that, it's as we hinted on the parking, but the efficiency driver within the multifamily has also been very important, because as we're facing these global challenges, we need to kind of maximize every dollar where we can to make this project come to life, especially when, as Brent hinted, a shovel in the ground on these doesn't start until the U.S. Bank branch is complete, which is Q1 of 2023. So even longer answer is that, when we look at how do we drive this and how do we make this project feasible with this type of construction, this 24 stories is the sweet spot for efficiencies. And that starts with structural and ends with elevators and access. So it's really a science similar to the parking science on how you lay out a ramp to drive these cost efficiencies within the tower. Is that fair?
Yeah. Yes, that's absolutely correct.
Thank you. Any other questions? Otherwise, we can move. Oh, we'll do comments, but let's do Commissioner Miranda.
Yeah, is there a reason that the parking garage doesn't have any kind of, Mick mentions in his comments that, it should be fronted with either housing or shops or something. Is there any reason there's nothing much there?
Yes. 2 reasons. Number one is that with the efficiency of the parking, Commissioner Miranda, the site, due to the bifurcation of the super block, is simply much too constrained size-wise to provide flexible uses with any kind of efficiency. And number 2 is then, when we look at it, we've got 2 different construction types coming together, which increases the costs exponentially.
Could you theoretically put on the first level, though, you could put more of like the vendor zones, or is that the bikes along there, though?
Yeah, yes, that's what we are accomplishing with this significant bike storage room. And it's a different type of construction in precast versus PT in Site A, which again is a without taking a deep dive into construction, is a completely different type of construction.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think one other thing to note is, because of the efficiencies that Ted is talking about with the sloped ramp as opposed to the flat ramp, you can actually see in that image, if you were to zoom in, that we're actually utilizing that space underneath the sloped ramp that would not otherwise be ideal for that sort of single bay depth of retail space, but certainly works well for like a bike storage. So we're really trying to maximize the footprint of this building. But as Ted said, that site is so narrow north to south that to get any sort of efficient parking layout on there, you really can't take much away from it.
The only other thing I was going to add too is that we mentioned before previously that we do have an approved plat, and we are actually planning for there is an easement that's planned to the south. So we're already making moves right now for the future and accommodating that tighter site on Site C. That's not really shown in these plans.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Brent. And to further add on to that is on the east side of the site along Drew, where's the site plan? Here is we've got this activation north and south on Ewing, and Director Teague can vouch for this. We've got easements in place. So eventually, as Drew is reconstructed with a hopeful redevelopment of the site to the east, which is Warner, Stellian, and Pancake House, we can provide a similar level of activation along this portion of the east side of our first floor parking that is here on Ewing.
Any more questions, Commissioner Miranda? Okay. Commissioner Bennett?
Hey, how's it going, guys? Oh man. So yeah, I mean, I have comments to discuss too, and
Can we wait for the comments for after the public hearing?
Yeah, I understand that. So the next thing I was going to say is, but I do have questions. So I guess fundamentally, you know, having something approved that we did 10 months ago, a lot of things have changed. A lot of things have come back, and certainly more things are going to change. If we're talking about global everything, right, with climate and other critical things we need to address. I guess the big change here is affordable housing was replaced with a massive parking ramp, and I appreciate a lot of the other changes because I do think they are for the better, but as a whole, I cannot see this as an improvement compared to the last one as a whole. I certainly agree that other things were improvements. So I just want to understand specifically how much additional parking is in the ramp more than what you need. Because I know, I mean, how many stalls did you say it was?
Well, based on the parking study, there are 417 stalls over what the uses would generate the need for.
So I guess that's where I just want to have an answer, because if we're talking about efficiencies, you know, the average price of a parking stall on a ramp's about 20 grand. So that's like $8 million extra you're just putting into that corner of the project. So I just want to understand why. Better than what I've heard. I just, that fundamentally I can't get past.
Yeah, Commissioner Bennett, thanks for the direct question. You and I have worked on a lot of these projects together, and frankly, we respectfully, we need to have that parking to service a 4 per 1,000 parking ratio in the office building and to support the retail and vibrancy that this will bring to this corner. And secondly, it provides for after-hours activation beyond office hours, weekends, nights, for future district events. So that, in a nutshell, is the parking that we need to be able to make this project go.
So that ramp is, so I guess how many more parking stalls are you providing compared to the previous plan? Is it a wash?
I think we're within like 5 stalls from the previous plan. It's almost identical.
But you've eliminated 30% of the housing and the need for it, right? I mean, I just feel like I must be missing something. Because I know you guys have to operate with, you know, capital or these projects don't happen, but something, I just must be missing something. So I just have more questions to that to try to understand why, and I'm falling short, so.
Yeah, in the previous proposal, we had 120 units with somewhere around 80 parking stalls. And so as a result of that change, while we're slightly less now, we need to maintain the bulk of the parking to support the retail and the office uses and the activation of the district.
Okay. I guess I might not understand. And as it's beneficial to have parking efficient in one spot, I also argue that, you know, people having to park somewhere else and walk to a different building isn't efficient for that use. And I guess as I look to the future for our community, it is not prioritizing parking to this level. So it's really hard for me to get over that ramp coming in instead of the affordable housing. And I'll have more comments to that. that's really the bulk of where I have the questions, because everything else you have, like, and shown, I really do like. I mean, there's a lot of creative elements to that. So I do want to acknowledge that, especially with the plaza. I mean, seeing the video, the walkthrough, all that, you guys nailed it. And even with how you could use a ramp with the flexible garage spaces, that's creative, and I like that. But having an entire ramp there is just hard for me to stomach.
Yeah, and again, I think there's a couple other just nuances that I'd like to point out that are important. So,
Sure.
26% of the units in the multifamily, 24-story multifamily product are studio or alcoves. So while they don't meet the definition at 50 or 60% affordable AMI, they're between 80 and 100%. But we can't claim credit for affordable for that, but I think it's an important nuance that 26% of those units, as called out in our report, are more affordable than traditional apartments.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And
thanks for pointing that out.
Yeah, and the second piece is that, our buy-in is at the 125,000 unit, where previously it was 100,000 unit. So that's another significant change. So I think that some recognition for those two nuances as it relates to affordable are important.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just going to be honest, I'm struggling with that ramp. Even if it fits with what you're saying, I mean, you're also saying it can provide district parking. So I'm missing it. So I'm sorry, but a lot of my decision's going to rest on that. And so I look forward to more discussion, but that's kind of where I'm at.
I do want a clarification too. So Carrie, or Director Teague, they, by code, are required 695 spots. Is that right? Or is that, and you are saying that you need, and you have 1,112 total?
1,000 plus stalls.
Code is 1,085 stalls. Based on the code that you all recommended to the city council that they didn't take action on, the number was, I wrote it down here somewhere, a little over 800. Based on the parking study, said that 695 stalls would be needed to support the development.
Okay, so 695 is based off of their reality. 1,085 is what code is requiring,
Correct.
and they have 1,112.
Correct.
Yeah, I was just going to add a comment too, because I know one thing that specifically hasn't been asked is we do have underground parking, but we didn't go further on underground parking, and we actually did get a preliminary approval from the watershed district. And you're probably not surprised, but the water table's pretty shallow here. So we're pretty much at our max depth for parking in this location. So that's another reason why we're doing parking above grade instead of below grade.
Are there any more questions before we go to the public hearing? Please.
I really like the plan for the plaza. I think it's great. I've been to like multiple food truck festivals with my job, like catering there. It's wonderful. Like it's a lot of people go there. I was wondering about like the bottom floor retail though, in the office retail space. Like, is the majority of that going to be like facing outside towards 70th and France, or is it going to be like more in towards the plaza? And how many spaces are there for that?
Commissioner, great question. Thank you for asking. And that's something we didn't get a chance to elaborate on. But our vision right now would be that the activation of those retail spaces would be out onto the pedestrian plaza as opposed onto France. We'd like to have activity on France, but as everybody's probably aware, the pedestrian climate there isn't as good as it will be on Ewing Avenue side. In terms of how many spaces, right now I think we're looking at 3 leasehold spaces, but that certainly will be defined by the market based on really the level of interest and the appropriateness of the retailers in question.
Director Teague, could you help get our presentation back? Do you mind? Thank you. So I think somebody just touched on how we activate Ewing, and these are the shots that I think we as a design and development team get most excited about, was dual use along here, where these are opened up to help support public uses, not just parking, so on and so forth, so that these are available for vendors. And this is the shot, as you know, living here for 20 plus years, I get excited about. How do we take this 1970s beauty building and turn it into something really cool?
To the commissioner's question specifically, I think this image maybe starts to outline kind of what our vision is. The spaces in question really are along that side on the plaza there, and you can kind of begin to see how we envision that occurring.
Yeah, before it was more of a tunnel. The office building was pulled closer to Ewing. We've flipped it to create much more space and openness along Ewing.
All right, yeah, thank you.
All right, well then let's move on to the public hearing. So we will now hear from residents who would like to provide testimony. If you are participating remotely, call in now at 1-800-374-0221 with conference ID 9329488. An operator will ask you for your name and street address and put you in a queue to speak after you press star 1. But first, we will hear from those in the room and then move to those on the phone. So is anyone here tonight to provide public testimony for this public hearing? Okay, seeing none, I will look to the phone lines. Has anyone dialed in?
We still have our one caller who is on the line, but no one in queue. So again, we'll wait about 30 seconds or so. And actually, that was plenty of time. We do now have a caller in queue. If the operator can please unmute the line of Lori Groats. And Ms. Groats, please state your name and address for the record, and then you can begin speaking once acknowledged.
Thank you. Lori Groats, 5513 Park Place. I also have concerns about this parking ramp. 8 stories. Our city is trying to discourage the use of vehicles. Have an 8-story parking ramp. And whenever they use the term district parking, think TIF. They want money. They want taxpayers to absorb the cost of their parking ramp for the 417 spots. There isn't any need for parking in that area. Plenty of parking at Galleria, plenty of parking at the site that's to the south. In fact, constantly we hear about Southdale being overparked, and now they're talking about putting in more district parking. This is money. They are looking for money. This is TIF. It was mentioned, well, what if they need more parking at Galleria? Galleria already has a ramp down at the end that's can be used by Galleria shoppers, but it's essentially there for the hotel that is there. The pocket park that they have on the east side of the building, I see that is for the benefit of the office building and the benefit of the apartment building, those dwellers. You're not going to see it from France Avenue. They're going to ask for money for us to pay for that pocket park for TIF. That's for the benefit of the building and also office building and also for the apartment building. As far as parking goes, the Bower, which is not too far from there, they've provided for their own parking. They haven't done a parking ramp. They didn't ask for any money whatsoever. I'm sure that probably the water table isn't any differently down there. I do have concerns about blocks being 200 feet long, and we're adding more streets. I don't think that's what we need financially. I don't think it's going to be sustainable going forward because developers will not pay for this. This will all be paid for by taxpayers through TIF, and I don't think we need to be adding more streets. If I'm going to go and sit in a park, I'm going to sit in a park that's by my house. Am I going to get into a car and drive to Southdale? Most of the Edina residents that I know try to avoid driving to Southdale because there's already so much traffic there. I don't think that this project is imaginative at all. The mayor has called it one of the most valuable pieces of property that we have in the city, and this is what we're going to get is a 24-story apartment building, an 8-story parking ramp, and he said 8-story parking ramp will help to diminish the appearance of a 24-story building. 1,500 square feet of retail, but yet they're going to dedicate 1,300 square feet for a parking or for a bike parking facility, and they're going to expect us to pay for that too? No, I just don't see the benefit of this project at all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other callers?
We do not.
All right. Well, with that, we could probably close the public hearing.
I move to close the public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the public hearing portion is closed. So with that, we will open it up to comment from the commissioners. Commissioner Alkire, please kick us off.
Just before comments, I just wonder, Planner Teague, if it's appropriate to, is there any response to the caller's comments about public financing and TIF? And I mean, how should we be thinking about those particular comments that she had in relation to this project?
The Planning Commission's role is to take action on the land use request and not consider that financial piece with the TIF. That ultimately is a decision. Should they make an application, a formal application for TIF, a decision by the HRA.
Okay, thank you.
So you're really just focusing on the land use piece of it.
Well, I'll start with the comments. You know, I appreciate what you've done with the public space, like with this, you know, the graphic that we have up on the screen, but I can't support this at all. It was a struggle to get you, you know, to provide the last plan that we did approve. And I know you're kind of, you know, keep commenting about reducing the height and density. That's why I like that last plan. We want that. We want height. We want density in this area of Southdale. You know, just looking through the Mitch's comments, I mean, he's spot on. And, you know, even with the brick, you know, I'm going to disagree, but that was really something that we worked, spent a lot of time on. And there are some, you know, definite reasons to provide that to the buildings along France and within that Southdale district. So I would still want to see that too, but I can't support this at all. I know we keep discussing the district parking, or, you know, that this could be district parking, but that wasn't even proposed. It's not even, has been planned to say that this is the location that we should have district parking. We just don't, you know, we lost affordable housing, which is so critical and so needed for parking ramp. And that's it. Those are my three main points, but I cannot support this.
Commissioner Miranda.
Yeah, thank you. So I have similar comments. I understand market conditions have changed because of COVID and whatnot, but I think far better projects have been able to be built recently. But I'd like to point out what I liked about the original project and what this improves on. So the original project was fine. And as Commissioner Olson said, you know, 24 stories, 9 stories, I mean, that's all appropriate in this district. I mean, this is the perfect spot to have that sort of density. So there's no concerns there at all, as far as I'm concerned. But Other improvements, including the removal of the turn lane on France, that was nice to have. The park being moved to the sunnier location is also a nice move. That was, thank you for that. And the removal of the parking entrances on Ewing Avenue are also a nice addition to what's going on here. However, there are many deep problems, and I think, again, as Commissioner Olson mentioned, Mick Johnson's comments are really spot on a lot of things. I asked about the frontage for the parking building and or the parking structure, and he had a diagram actually in his comments that showed that the block could be broken up in a different way that would allow that to happen. The monolithic parking structure is really horrific for any kind of urbanism. You compare this to the parking structure at Pentagon Park, and that's probably the worst part of that entire project. And we've had many kind of negative comments about it on this commission. I've walked and biked around that project since it was built, and it's really, the parking garage is the worst part of it. So we talked about parking minimums this year on the commission, and I think this shows why what we actually need is parking maximums, because I think the massive addition of parking on this is a huge mistake that we really don't want in this area. You compare this potential, like a potential art fair, like something at 50th and France, and you have a nice mock-up there and everything. But the key difference on France is that the street is activated because there are storefronts, there are things to do in the area, and I just don't really see that in this proposal. Activation of the street, which is talked about a lot, is not about green space, it's not about prettiness, it's not even about art on buildings or walls, but it's about storefronts, front porches, things that draw people. It's not about looking nice. And I think there isn't very much of that here. So there's a lot about cars here, and the renderings show all the sports cars, and even the video showed sports cars going through the area, and the people are like decorations on that. My question is, who would go here and why? I mean, I can't see why anyone would walk or bike here. As others have mentioned, affordable housing. It seems odd that this wasn't penciled out before the previous proposal. You know, and the underground parking being too close to the water table. This feels like pushing the project through without any sense of reality. It's like there's no due diligence. I mean, you're not expected to have everything perfect, but it seems like, you know, if those things were as big issues as they are, that reduced it by that many levels of parking, it seems like it should have been known before the project was proposed in the first place. So I also can't support this project, and the lack of affordable housing and the parking structure are a big part of that. So thank you.
I can call on people. Commissioner Elkhire.
Not going to plow too much new ground compared to what I was kind of alluding to before, but I mean, there are many, many things I like about this. I think the potential benefits of the plaza have already been described. I guess unlike Commissioner Miranda, I can actually see myself biking there if there were an event there that I wanted to go to. Actually, I did find I have found a way that I could actually bike there, mostly on bike paths and not be on France. So I could see that as a possibility. And I do compliment you on many of the changes since the last version. However, when it comes right down to it, on balance, I just cannot support a parking ramp with 540 parking stalls, of which it seems like 400 we don't need. For me, it's as simple as that. Of all the things I like about the project, that really is a bridge too far for me.
Commissioner Bennett?
I guess I mean, you kind of know the nature of my comments. I kind of alluded to them in the questions, and I was just trying to get to the bottom of truly understanding why and supporting the vision of why things changed the way they did, and I still have the same questions, especially when we look at the priorities of our community in the future, actually looking forward. I think this is taking many steps back, and financially I don't understand unless there is ulterior motives to get money through a different sort. I don't understand why someone would overpark a site 400 stalls if money matters. So I just can't fundamentally understand that, and because of that change, and the move away from affordable housing, which we need, and this is the perfect location for that. I mean, this isn't the perfect location for excess parking. So, looking at those two, I can't support this change. Thanks.
Please go ahead.
I would just like to say one thing on the parking is whenever I go to 50th, and I love the plaza and making it more like 50th, whenever I go to 50th and I'm in the parking garage by Nolan Maids, I always find the top floor parking doesn't really have any cars on it. And that's only, a four-story parking garage. So I really don't see how so many parking spots are needed, even though there's apartment building and a business. There's less storefronts, so I think there's going to be less people coming, so I don't see why there needs to be a bigger parking garage. That just doesn't make logical sense to me. But I like the design and everything else. I just think there needs to be less spots.
Thank you. Commissioner Strauss.
Well, I agree with all my other commissioners. I guess where I ended up, I take Mick Johnson's comments and reviews typically pretty seriously. He's been an invaluable service in very many projects, and particularly Southdale. He is kind of our go-to expert. That rose some concerns with overall projects. I must say, though, with your presentation, there were improvements, and I approved the previous submittal. I think there have been some improvements, especially at Ewing. I like that. But my support for this, I guess, is sort of like the staff report. It's lukewarm. On balance, I guess I will approve it. I think it's at least it's moving forward here, but I'm certainly in sympathy with my other members in their disapproval. But I guess overall I'm leaning towards approving.
Thank you, Commissioner Strauss. Commissioner Bartling, if you would like, no pressure.
I made a lot of comments already.
Okay, you don't have to.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough one for me, really, because I think there's, it's been noted that there's a lot of great things that are happening, and I like the more modern idea of what's going on. As I've noted, I know there's the bike path, the 9 Mile Creek bike path almost takes you straight to this. I could see our city as a whole needs to improve our bike path, and that's just a side comment. But as you get here, but I do struggle with the parking because it's just something we're talking about every meeting we're here, and really trying to improve what we are as a whole with that, and trying to reduce car usage, all that, is, and that's maybe a dream down the way, but and then I know the affordable housing piece, yeah, and I wasn't part of the first process, and approvals, so I know a little bit about it, but hearing what it's from, where it's going, yeah, I'm torn on it, because I think, this is great for this site because it is kind of a dead spot. There's a lot of things going on with it, but I feel like you could take this one level up and do a little more, and then it could be great.
Thank you. Did you want to make any?
Yeah, I think I agree mostly with like the other commissioners. They've kind of summed up my thoughts. It is like a lot of parking, and there isn't much retail going on there. So yeah, no further comments.
Thank you. My thoughts. Something needs to happen in this space, right? So thank you for continuing to work on this site. I understand that there are challenges to the location, and I can appreciate that. I really like the new vehicle access points. I think that that makes a lot of sense, and I love what then that means we can do for the activation for the center there. I love the marketscape. But I also think that that's something that could be done as previously drafted, of thinking of keeping the workforce housing and not having that replaced by the parking. I don't like that there's no affordable housing, and it's really that unnecessary parking ramp. I think that this is unneeded, and I don't know that people would park there. And I think one of the phrases was pre-build, and I don't think that we need to pre-build parking in this area. A parking ramp is not a piece of art, and it isn't a way to really lean into the future. With an office space, people go home from work, and that allows for that complementary parking, which would then allow you to activate at night and on the weekends. And so I think that the ask would be to be creative without over parking, which kind of summarizes what I think a lot of other commissioners were saying. So thank you. Is anyone interested in making a motion?
Okay. I recommend denial of the request, and base that on those conditions that you listed, or
The findings for
the
denial.
findings in the staff report.
I will second.
All right. Any further discussion? Okay, so I'm going to ask for all of those in favor, which is in favor of voting to deny. So an aye is a deny vote here. So all of those in favor of denying this request, please say aye. Aye. All of those opposed, please say nay. Nay. All right, thank you. The denial of this application was what was passed. So thank you very much for coming in tonight. Okay, the next item on our agenda is reports and recommendations, which I don't think we have any tonight. Then we go to chair and member comments. Commissioner Bennett.
A couple things. So first, you might recall our last meeting, we talked about, I forget the name of the proposal, but it was also in the Southdale area for the new surgical center. It did go before the city council since we last met, and even in those 2 weeks, they took our feedback and basically transformed their project to match exactly what we recommended. So things can be done, right? And planning does matter, and I was tuning into that, and it was reassuring to see, because things can be done for the better, right? If you have a project team that's receptive to that and actually caring about the future. And I just say that in direct contrast to like what I experienced tonight. It just feels like something worse is pushed on us, and like, hey, this is better. It just didn't feel authentic, and that's, complemented with something that I thought was pretty authentic the last meeting we had, and then the, I guess, direct change as a result. And I didn't tune into the whole thing, but I know there's like a window to comment on that was probably closed by now. But did the council make a decision? Or that's next week, right? Next Tuesday?
Right.
Okay.
You stole my thunder. That was going to be part of my update for you all, but
Oh yeah, that's a big thing. And then, yeah, I'm sure Lou will share, something related to climate's going really bad. Every week it's not good news, so I'll rest there. I will have updates next meeting on this local Grandview project, though.
Thank you. Commissioner Miranda, do you have an update for us?
Not at this time, no.
All right. Anyone else tonight? All right. Next, we go to staff comments. Carrie.
So to piggyback on, to get into the specifics, you recalled the 3 conditions that you all put on that project. They met every one of them. So that included extending the sidewalk. That was an easy one. But they showed it on the plans. They updated their plans. They relocated the entrance to the corner, including the patio. And it wasn't as detailed of a rendering as we typically see, but you could see that they clearly had done that. And they also eliminated the access to 65th. So there's no vehicle access to 65th. They have both entrances coming off that south end. So where the patio was is essentially where the second entrance is. And so they didn't take action on it, but they will take action at their meeting next week. And the other project was 4630 France. So the council held the public hearing, a lot of feedback, mainly against, but they will take action at their next meeting. So they have the options, approval, denial before them. So we'll see what they do. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Carrie. All right, I think last on the agenda is adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second it.
All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.